So, former President Donald Trump was found guilty in a New York criminal case that involved all that stuff with the hush money with Stormy Daniels. So here we have from NPR. Former President Trump is found guilty in a historic New York criminal case. Former President Donald Trump has been found guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records to influence the outcome of the 2016 presidential election, a historic verdict as Trump, the presumptive Republican presidential nominee, campaigns again for the White House. And here's the thing, I'm pretty sure it is 34 out of 34. Like, unless I'm mistaken, I'm pretty sure that was all the counts. He went bar for bar when it came for counts. Like, he got all of them. Was racking them up. This is the first time a former or sitting U.S. president has been convicted of criminal charges. On Thursday, 12 New York jurors say they unanimously agree that Trump falsified business records to conceal a $130,000 hush money payment to adult film star Stormy Daniels to influence the 2016 contest. The decision came after a day and a half of deliberations. As the verdicts were read, Trump remained silent and still, but the former president spoke to reporters outside the courtroom, calling the trial a rigged and disgraceful trial. It was rigged because, of course, that's his go-to. It was rigged. They're all against me. And saying that the real verdict will be rendered on Election Day. Trump's legal team signaled it would appeal the conviction. I highly doubt that. Because, like, here's the thing. This is, like, so unusual, by the way. And here we see, like, literally all the charges. All the felony counts. He got all of them. But, like, this is so unprecedented for someone, for A, former president, for B, someone who is as well known and as affluent, has a lot of money like Trump does, even though like he's not as rich as he likes to make himself seem, but like compared to the average person, yeah, he's loaded. But it's just, I feel like once you hit this case like where you're so well known, you're a former president, you have a lot of money, and yet you are still found guilty on all charges, there's no appealing that. It's just like, look, this has never happened before. You were so bad that we had to charge you with these. New York Judge Juan Merchan set sentencing for July 17th, just 4 days before the start of the Republican National Convention. Trump faces a maximum sentence of 4 years in prison, but as a first-time white-collar offender, no prison time is necessary, and he could receive probation instead. So yeah, I don't think he's gonna go to prison at all. It's more likely, like what they say here, probation. It would be funny if they had him do a community service. I would love to see that. The jury heard from 22 witnesses during the 4 weeks of testimony in Manhattan's criminal court. Jurors also weighed other evidence, mostly documents like phone records, invoices, and checks to Michael Cohen, Trump's once loyal fixer, who paid Daniels to keep her story of an alleged affair with the former president quiet. The facts of the payments and invoices labeled as legal services were not in dispute. What prosecutors needed to prove was that Trump falsified the records in order to further another crime, in this case violating the New York election law that makes it a crime for any 2 or more persons to conspire to promote or prevent the election of any person in a public office by unlawful means. The jurors were able to choose whether those unlawful means were violating the Federal Election Campaign Act, falsifying tax returns, or falsifying other business records. Trump's defense focused initially on the credibility of Cohen and argued that influencing an election is not illegal. I mean, in this case, yeah, it definitely is. Because I believe it was a whole thing of like he just wanted to keep this quiet until, the election results came in. Because I'm pretty sure it was a whole thing of like, he didn't really care if she got paid or not. Which was like, such a dumb move to do. Like, obviously you should just pay her if you want to keep her quiet. The verdict came more than a year after a grand jury indicted Trump on March 30th, 2023, marking the first time a former or sitting president faced criminal charges. Republicans dismissed the indictment as an overreach of power by Democratic District Attorney Alvin Bragg, who had brought the charges. On Thursday, following the conviction, Republican elected officials quickly rallied around Trump again. At a news conference Thursday evening, Bragg said, "While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor." The fact that he has been found for every single one of these cases, it's just like it makes me happy, but like it definitely makes me happy just from how like fucked up the justice system is that it finally works this one time. But at the same time, like it does, there is that like sobering realization of like nothing's really gonna happen to him. This is a CNN interview featuring Donald Trump's lead attorney Todd Blanc. I think that's what his last name is. But he went on CNN, and I believe this is the interview that people are referring to. I mean, just when you kind of look at the comments, this is like the interview a lot of people have been referring to as kind of like him just making a fool out of himself.
Todd, thank you for being here. Why do you think the jury found Donald Trump guilty on all counts?
I mean, well, I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I think the understanding why a jury reaches a verdict is something that every single trial lawyer in the country would love to be able to answer honestly.
They do it by looking at the evidence. They do it by looking at the stuff that is laid out during the trial. And that's definitely how they come to their verdict. We're also going to kind of speed this up. I'm not sure if we're going to watch all of it. Donald Trump, I feel he has a bad habit of just getting the worst lawyers. Maybe just because, like, I don't know, maybe it's just like his reputation as a businessman. Because despite the fact that he does have a lot of money, he's not the greatest businessman.
Look, a lot goes into a jury verdict that doesn't even include what happened at the trial. You know, the decisions that are made before the trial, the decisions that the court makes and that the parties decide about what witnesses to call, what evidence to put in. You know, so I think that at the end of the day, it remains true that if the word of Michael Cohen was not accepted at all, then you could not have convicted President Trump, and the jury convicted. So at the end of the day, they looked past what we thought were fatal flaws in Mr. Cohen's story and his past, and they reached a guilty verdict.
Right, but it wasn't just...
And it's funny that they're trying to like spin this on being like, well, Michael Cohen, he's not reliable. It's like, he's not really a reliable person because like of the actions he did for you. Hassan Piker made a reference like, if you had like a mob boss on trial, and they brought in a hitman who got in trouble for, being a hitman to testify against the mob boss because they used to work together. And the mob boss couldn't just turn around and be like, "Judge, this is a hitman. Can we really take what he says seriously? Like, he used to work for you. He was a hitman for you. That's how he got in trouble." Like, what are you talking about?
The word of Michael Cohen. I mean, there was other evidence in this case, the documents. They wanted to rehear David Pecker's testimony. I mean, they took all of that into consideration.
Sure. No, look, of course the jury will take everything into consideration. They were very serious. Look, this jury showed up on time every day. They were very focused on the evidence and on the testimony that came in. And there was a lot. But look, at the end of the day...
So they did what, a jury's supposed to do.
It was still a case, in our view, as we've been saying for a year, that relied on testimony of conversations and interactions that took place 7, 8, 9 years ago, and certainly documents were part of the case. But the documents, the 34 counts, were documents that really had very little connection to President Trump, but for the few checks that he signed. Look, I very much believe that the jury should have found President Trump not guilty. I mean, in my soul, I believe that, and I believed it for a year. I mean, I left my job to do what I did the past 6 weeks, and my conviction around what happened today and what I believe the facts show, it remains the same.
I know you disagree with the outcome, obviously, but do you accept that he did have his day in court and it was a jury of his peers that made this decision?
No, not at all.
Why not?
No, I mean, look, I think, and this is nothing that we haven't said repeatedly, we were indicted for conduct that happened in 2015, 16, 17. In a jurisdiction that it was very hard for us to get a fair trial, Caitlin. I mean, and I know the district attorney has repeatedly said it today, this is a bread and butter case, we do this all the time. That is not true. It's just not true. It may be that they bring these types of charges regularly, business records charges, but you cannot find another case in the Manhattan district attorneys, in the history of that office, where they did what they did here, which is charge somebody for conduct that was 7, 8 years old.
He was like, guys, it was a long time ago. Who cares at this point? there's a part of me that just kind of feels sad for this guy, being like, I gave up my career to do what I did over the last 6 months. Dude, I mean, the last 6 weeks. Like, bro, how terrible was your career that you were just like, you were willing to give all of it up to do this? We'll get into it later. He brings up some of his like career back into this, so, like what he was doing
Personal
beforehand.
records, right? Not corporate records, it's personal records. So this is not, I think it's naive to say that this is like any other case that we do. What we did in this case is what we do all the time. No. And maybe it's okay. I mean, they think it's okay they did it.
Well, because I think the response to that would be, well, it's also not every day that someone running for president reimburses his attorney who paid off a woman to keep her silent. And when you say about getting a fair jury, this is where Donald Trump, I mean, you know New York well. This is where Donald Trump chose to have his businesses and spent decades of his life until just recently. I mean, that's why the case was here. I think some people would say, well, that's ridiculous that a jury couldn't put their beliefs aside. You just talked about how hard they worked in this case. Don't you think that they put their political beliefs or biases or stereotypes aside to make a fair decision here?
I don't know what they did or didn't do, but listen, Caitlin, it matters, right? Like when 100, we did it in groups of about 100 when we picked that jury. Half the jury just walked out when invited to by the judge if they couldn't be fair and impartial. So imagine if you're standing before a group of your peers, right? That's what a jury system is supposed to be. So you're standing for a group of your peers, and half of them walk out before a single question is asked, just because they have an opinion of you that is so strong they can't be fair and
But
impartial.
these 12, to be fair, did not.
Well, they did not, of course, but that's not really the point. The point isn't that 50 stayed. The point is that it's telling how many just walked out, and also the fact that President Trump did business in.
Yeah, but the people who stayed were the ones who were picked. So like they do very much have strong convictions that they could do this fair and honestly. Like that's the whole point of like. I said earlier, obviously the, justice system is fucked for many different reasons. But when it comes to a jury of peers, I feel like that's an aspect that is like definitely a solid K. Like, and the thing about that is that people's biases are still going to play a factor into it. But I do think it is like probably one of the good aspects. Like, yeah, we should have like a jury that is full of people that are like that will come at this through a fair viewpoint.
That's not the law. The law doesn't say, well, tough luck. If that's where you do business, then that's where you're going to be tried.
He built his business here and he resided here. And I guess if you think, if you talked about the testimony and when this happened, well, why didn't the cross-examination of these witnesses or what you put forward, your defense, why didn't that work? Why did it still lead to this outcome?
Well, that's a great question. If you know the answer to that, tell me. I mean, look, I think that at the end of the day, I do think it comes to something that we talk about a lot of times in our profession, where there's a bias that you have that you can't get past. I mean, you say that this is where he built his business. That's true. Every single person on that jury knew Donald Trump, either as president, as candidate, from The Apprentice. And so I don't accept that this was a fair place to try.
Is that what you're going to? What's your main argument going to be in your appeal?
Look, I think there were a lot. That is certainly an argument. I think the timing of this trial and was.
You could also make that case of like the O.J. Simpson trial, being like O.J. Simpson was such a big name at the time that more than likely everyone who was on the jury for that case, for that like trial, knew him. But you can't make that like no shit. This is. When you have someone who's so well known in that respect, it will always be impossible to find someone who doesn't know who that is. It would be like who's a famous person? It would be like if Mike Tyson was put on trial. You would have to like go to some like an Amish village, and even then, I bet there would be most people who'd be like, "Yeah, I know Mike Tyson." He's basically making the case of being like, "Guys, my client is too famous. He's too famous to have a fair trial." Oh, woe is him.
It was really unfair to President Trump. There was so much publicity around the witnesses and around leading up to the trial that our system of justice isn't supposed to be a system where every person that walks in the courtroom knows about the case. I mean, and it sounds like
it's one of those cases where you can't avoid it. I mean, no matter what jurisdiction he's tried in,
the law doesn't say, but if you can't avoid it, tough luck, right? That's not what the law says. The law says that a person is entitled to a fair trial in front of a jury of their peers. And we just think that because of everything around the lead up to this trial, it made it very difficult for the jury to evaluate the evidence kind of independent of what they knew coming in. And we knew that, and that's not something that we've been screaming that from the rooftops.
Well, let's talk about, you said a few of your arguments on the appeal. When do you plan to file your appeal?
Well, there's a lot of, look, this is one step in the process, right? So we have motions due in a couple weeks in front of Judge Merchan, which we're going to vigorously fight and restate a lot of what I'm saying to you tonight, and other things that happened during the trial that we think just made the trial unfair, including the testimony of Ms. Daniels. If that is not successful, then as soon as we can appeal, we will. And the process in New York is there's a sentencing, and then we appeal from there.
District Attorney Bragg tonight did not directly say whether or not they are going to seek jail time for Donald Trump. Do you expect that he will?
I have no idea. Look, there's a system in place that where you.
I don't think they're going to. Probably some Republicans out there that aren't going to vote for him because now he is a criminal. He is a convict. But at the same time, I don't think that's going to stop a majority of them because he very much plays into the whole, everyone's against me. Like, it's me against them. So, like, this kind of just helps him a little bit further. I do think it definitely isolates people, but I don't think it's not like a large majority or even a large minority.
Rely on precedent, and somebody like President Trump should never face a jail sentence based on this conduct. And it would just kind of confirm what we've been saying all along. And a lot of people say that we're wrong and that we're missing key pieces. But if other 77-year-old first-time offenders would never be sent to prison for this conduct.
Judge Merchan will make that decision.
Correct. That's right.
Do you think the judge was fair throughout this case?
I think that there were times when we very much disagreed.
Wasn't this the judge that that Donald Trump called a thug? Oh yeah, he continuously talked about his daughter.
With what the decisions Judge Merchan made. I think there were times when we certainly appreciated that he was making decisions, weighing both sides and making decisions based upon that. But at the end of the day, there were key decisions made before the trial started and during the trial that I don't want to use a fair or unfair, but that we think were not consistent with the law.
But you can't say if he was fair or not?
Well,
he ruled in your favor sometimes, he ruled against you sometimes.
Yeah, but no, I think saying whether someone's fair or unfair is not really the question. The question is whether decisions that he made before the trial, in advance of the trial, with the omnibus motions, with the motions in limine, and then during the trial, were they right under the law? Was he right doing that? And that's where I think we have disagreements. We think there were a lot that were not.
Why did Donald Trump not ultimately take the stand here?
Well, that's a very personal question to him and to me, honestly. And it's a very difficult question. Of course, he wanted to testify, and I don't say that because that's what he has said. He wanted to get his story out. I think the judge had made some decisions before the trial, the day the trial started, about what would be allowed to be asked of him by the prosecutors if he took the stand. And some of those questions were really complicated to answer because there's still appeals going on, and so there's a lot of decision points that go into whether somebody testifies. Ultimately, it's his decision, and he listened to us, and he relied on our counsel, and he reached a decision that he thought was right, which I very much agreed with.
So that means your counsel was for him to not take the stand.
I'm not going to tell you what my counsel was.
But you said he relied on counsel, and he went.
Yeah, but that's what you're saying. We told him something, and he followed it, and ultimately he didn't take the stand. So obviously you told him not to do so, and I think that's fair. I feel like it would definitely been entertaining for him to take the stand, but I feel like from their perspective, it would just make him look worse.
With that decision, and he didn't take the stand.
But ultimately, it was his decision, and I never say, and I think colleagues and folks who you have on here hopefully agree with me. I never say to somebody, "Don't take the stand." Right? That's their decision, and that's a decision that they have to make. But I want them to have they want them to know what will happen on the good and the bad if they do take the stand.
So no regrets on him not taking the stand.
Look, the verdict came down a couple hours ago. I don't know if I have any regrets about anything yet. I'm still thinking things through, and I think so.
You definitely should be. You should be regretting this interview.
Or so is he, and so everybody else around him. But at this point, I don't think that there was a conviction because he did not take the stand.
When he was leaving, one thing he brought up were the witnesses who were not called, and he was saying that there could have been witnesses that would have helped make the case. We never saw Keith Schiller, Alan Weisselberg, some key figures here who got brought up a lot. Why didn't the defense call any of these witnesses? Well,
because we happen to live in America, and we don't have the burden of proof. And so that's not the point. That's a question that is a loaded question that should not be asked of a defense attorney or a defendant. The question that we asked the jury, and they ultimately obviously got passed, is why the prosecution didn't call those witnesses, right? You, as a defense attorney, you don't go into a case saying, I'm going to fill the holes of the prosecution, right? And Keith Schiller and some of the other witnesses that were not ultimately called, in our view, should have been called by the prosecution, and we asked the jury to take a hard look at that. I don't know whether they did or not, but they convicted.
Todd Blanche, I have a few more questions for you. If you'll stick around, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back much more with Donald Trump's lead attorney in a moment. The presumptive Republican nominee, now a convicted felon, guilty on all 34 counts today in his unprecedented hush money trial here in New York. His lead attorney, Todd Blanche, back here with me. Can we just talk about what it was like in the room today? Because our reporters, everyone kind of thought, reporters included, that no verdict was going to be reached. The judge himself seemed to think that. He went to go get the jury, and then he came back with a verdict note in hand. I mean, you and Trump had been sitting there talking, laughing, and then obviously realized a verdict was coming. You were obviously surprised?
Yes, I'm very surprised, but that's what juries do. Everybody that's been talking for the past 2 days about what they thought maybe a note meant or what a jury was thinking or how long they would deliberate, you never know. You never know. And I think there have been no notes really all day. And as 4:30 came, we were going to just go home and start again tomorrow. And then the jury, sent a note, said they reached a verdict. So it was surprising, but it wasn't surprising like, oh my gosh, I'm shocked. We had been prepared.
But were you prepared for a guilty verdict? Trump seemed to be telling people, from what I heard, he thought it was going to be a hung jury.
We were prepared for a guilty verdict. I mean, I don't know what people President Trump was saying that to, but of course, in our view, we were fighting to win the case, of course.
Ooh, I mean, that's not great. Like, they're literally like, yeah, we knew it was going to be a guilty verdict. I don't think that's the best view for you. Also, with like the whole witnesses thing. And here's the thing: when it comes to this trial, I haven't been like super glued to it. I kind of been watching from afar. It's why like I don't have a bunch of videos on my channel like really covering this at all. I feel like if Donald Trump is like being like, no, here's some witnesses you need to call, they're probably not that reliable because you already have Michael Cohen, who was like the fixer for this. Obviously, he would be the biggest name a part of that. I feel like it would make a lot of other people who were involved with this kind of irrelevant because, like, you have the main guy, the guy who was sent to fix it, who got in trouble for trying to fix it.
I think a lot of people are curious because we hear from a lot of former Trump attorneys what it's like to be a Trump attorney. How has it been for the last 7 weeks?
Listen, I hear former Trump attorneys talk on TV all the time as well. I have found the last 7 weeks to be,
About how they don't get paid.
and I don't want to use cliches, but it's been everything that I would expect and want out of a client, out of someone who has really putting their life in your hands. It's been challenging. It's been rewarding. President Trump is there's a persona that people have about him that is completely wrong. There's a persona that people have that is right in some ways too. It was the hardest in many people's lives. The hardest thing you do is go through a criminal trial, and he was. I was impressed, especially today, at the way that he carried himself and handled himself.
Well, there were moments, and I was in the court multiple times, where you would see you and Trump were often sitting next to each other, or the other attorneys, Emile Beauvais and Susan Nicholas. But Trump would, hit you on the arm, tap you on the arm, urge you to either object, or clearly was writing you notes and saying stuff. I mean, who ultimately was in charge of the defense strategy here? Was it you, or was it Donald Trump?
It was both of us. If there's a lawyer that comes in and says that they're in charge of their defense strategy, they're not doing a service to their client. Every decision that we made as a team, and not just President Trump and myself, but the whole team. And so, and again, every defendant, everybody who has their life on the line in history, will tap their lawyer every once in a while and say, hey, what about this? What about that? We not only did we get along during the trial, but we were on the same page about strategy and about what we should be doing and not doing. And it was, the one thing that I left with today is he impressed, hopefully, everybody that got to see what happened today, the way that he handled himself in the courtroom, hearing that 34 counts of guilty, the way that he handled himself really throughout the entire trial as somebody who is the Republican nominee, not campaigning, sitting in court all day. And I was right there with him the whole time, and I have no complaints about it.
But did it make your job harder and more difficult when he was constantly going after the judge, calling him corrupt, saying that he was so biased he couldn't breathe here, going after the witnesses in this case until the gag order? I mean, he violated the gag order at least 10 times here in this case. Didn't that make your job harder?
I don't think it made my job harder. It's something that we had to deal with during the trial as a team, and understanding that there's a message that he needed to get to the people, to the American people, the people who are deciding who to vote for in November. And part of that decision has to be, he is being judged for this trial. And that's a fact. And so when folks get upset that he responds to what he sees happening and responds forcefully, that's because he's being judged by everybody. He's being judged on television, by voters, in newspapers. And so the fact that he says, this is my opinion, this is my view, is not something that I looked at as making my job harder. I accepted that as being part of this job, and that is what he will continue to do. Like, I don't think he's going to stop tomorrow morning. Like, he has to explain to the American people why this whole year in front of the Manhattan DA in this case was completely unjust.
But can you do that without attacking Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen? I mean, there was one point where the judge had to use incredibly strong language with you because Trump audibly used an expletive when Stormy Daniels was on the witness stand.
When you say can you do that, you mean can you respond when
Isn't that
people are...
inappropriate?
That's what I was kind of looking for, is that he was like, oh, I was surprised with how he handled himself. That's what I was kind of looking for. When she was on the witness stand, apparently he said something
First in court, follow witnesses on the stand.
First of all, I don't think an outburst is the right way to describe what happened. As you know from being in the courtroom, the courtroom has very bizarre acoustics, and there's times when you can't hear a thing, and there's times when voice carries, and it was absolutely not an outburst.
The witness heard it. Stormy Daniels heard it.
As Daniels recounted that story, Trump appeared to mutter the word bullshit under his breath, while still not looking in Daniels' direction, although her image was on TV screens in front of him. That earned Trump a warning from the judge during a sidebar with attorneys. I understand that your client is upset at this point, but he is cursing audibly, and he is shaking his head visually, and that's contemptuous. It has the potential to intimidate the witness, and the juror can see it. You need to speak to him. I won't tolerate that. Yeah, that's not a great look.
I have no idea if that's true.
Her attorney told us that.
Okay, well, I that's the first time I'm hearing that, and I don't know that is true or false, but
you literally got like a warning from the judge being like, yo, keep him in line. What are you doing?
It was not an outburst. It was a reaction to, again, it's easy to sit here and throw stones and say, well, how come he said this? How come he said that? Why don't you go on trial for something that happened, I don't mean this you, I'm saying rhetorically you, for something that happened nearly 20 years ago when you hear somebody saying something that you believe is demonstrably false, and you can't do anything about it, and there is a reaction that folks agree with or disagree with.
Yeah, but he's doing that. He's trying to do that for something. He's trying to do that as a result. Like, that's something that could lead to a witness being intimidated. And also, like, yeah, it definitely doesn't make you look good in front of a jury. Like, if he actually cared about looking good, he wouldn't have done that.
President Trump, in my view, behaved in a way that I thought was exemplary for a defendant facing what he was facing in that environment, in that courtroom for the past 5 weeks. I mean,
You didn't think it was inappropriate when he came out and would rail against Judge Merchan and go after his daughter and other witnesses in this case?
He did not go after the judge's daughter after he was gagged at all. And by
Very specifying heavily there, after he was gagged.
the way, the defense went after the judge's daughter in public filings. So you want me to say that it was inappropriate for President Trump to do something that I believed under the law required to be brought to the judge's attention?
Well, attacking her on his, obviously he has a massive following. Making a point in a court filing is different than making a point on Truth Social.
Why? I mean, I guess I question that. So the idea is that.
What do you mean, why? It's obviously a different one. It's like, especially when you have someone who has such a big a following as Trump, something that, like, before he ran for president didn't exist. He literally created his own group of people called MAGA. Like, he has his own fan base now. So yeah, it's obviously more dangerous when he puts it out on a social platform that is really just there just for him. It's obviously a lot different than fucking having it in a court filing.
As an attorney, I'm allowed to make motions, put arguments in front of the judge. But if my client makes those same arguments to the people who are going to decide whether he should be president of the United States, somehow it's okay for me to do it, but he can't? I don't.
Yes, because you're doing it in a controlled environment with just a couple of people, or he's putting it out for the entire world to see.
Well, it's different venues, I think. I think there's
Sure,
a place to make your argument and doing it on Truth Social, attacking a private citizen. But
Nobody
on
reads
this front,
the papers, right? That's the problem, right? So it's easy to say, okay, defense attorney, you can file those papers, and there's
you're an
nothing wrong
attorney.
with
I mean, you read those filings. We read those filings. Obviously, we talk about those filings. But on this overall, I mean, you are relatively new to the Trump team. Your life has kind of changed since you've become a Trump attorney. You've moved to Florida. You're now registered as a Republican. You used to work at a big firm here. You're registered as a Democrat. Do you expect to continue to represent Trump in this case and in the federal cases?
Yes, absolutely. Listen, absolutely. I'm going to Florida next week, and we have a motion to compel hearing in the case at the end of June, and we have a lot of work to do. We haven't been working on that case for the past 6 weeks, and we are going to start fighting every day in Florida. We have briefing in this case, we have a sentencing in this case, and then we'll have an appeal. I have, putting aside changing my life, I think President Trump has put faith in me and my team, and there's a lot of great people that I work with. And
I think the only reason you're really there is because other people have lost faith in him, because he goes through lawyers like it's nothing, because he just doesn't do right by them, mostly because he doesn't know how to pick good lawyers.
As long as he has that faith, we're going to keep on doing what we're doing.
As we see right here.
The Trump attorneys that we sometimes hear is whether or not they were paid after. It's always a point of contention. Obviously, Michael Cohen talked about it. Has that ever been an issue for you since you've represented him?
No, and I don't know what Trump attorneys. I mean, I know that it's a fun folklore to talk about that Trump attorneys don't get paid and whatnot. But I don't. I mean, I don't know who that applies to. But of course, President Trump pays his bills, and I am getting paid. And if my mom's listening, I'm getting paid
for now.
And
that's just such a bad look. That's just such a bad look too. Just being like, "Mom, don't worry, I'm getting paid." Like, I don't know why. Like, I think he thought people would respond to that line with chuckles, but I think it's just like, if it's not a problem, why would you need to double down on it?
But that's not. I'm not alone. I'm not alone in that. It's not like I'm getting paid in the other. I mean, he has a lot of cases. He has a lot of lawyers right now, and I don't know if you're hearing something different, but the lawyers are getting paid.
Todd Blanche, quite a day for you. Thank you for coming in to join us on set tonight.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Trump found guilty. His lawyer made an ass of himself on live TV. But let's see how, the Trump supporters are handling this.
Holy shit, he was found guilty. Holy fucking shit. Holy fucking shit. Motherfuckers!
Also, just look at this guy's shirt. I love Donald Trump. You got a problem with that bitch? Gays for Trump.
Motherfuckers! You suck! You suck! There is no justice in this country!
Guilty!
Not guilty! He's not guilty! You pieces of shit! Walk the pond! Eat shit and die! You're fucking corrupt,
Your
motherfucker!
fucking kids are all dead. Your kids are all
Piece
fucking
of
dead.
shit!
All your
Piece of
fucking
shit.
children.
Jesus Christ.
I
Dead.
found guilty.
They're all fucking dead.
Yeah, motherfucker.
Fucking guilty.
Motherfucking piece of shit.
Fucking guilty.
Fucking piece of shit. There's no justice in this country.
Not
It's all
fucking guilty.
corruption. It's all fucking corruption. I have a message for you. Fuck you, Juan the Con. Juan the Con. I'm fucking pissed.
Fuck you and fuck Joe
Fucking.
Biden too.
Fuck Joe Biden.
All I know is this.
Fuckers. Fuckers. Yeah.
Guilty on a whole nother animal and a whole new way.
It's a lynching. It's a lynching. It's political interference. It's fuck you. There's no justice in this country.
It's over.
How do you feel?
Corruption.
Tell me your reaction.
I'm shocked. I don't want to believe it. That's unbelievable.
What
do you think about the verdict?
They're doing this to Donald
Corruption,
Trump
the judge
means that
signed
they
it.
could do this to all of us.
1776,
I'm
baby.
fucking pissed. I'm fucking
No, you're
pissed.
not. Calm down.
No, I'm not gonna calm down.
And the people who are on the
Get
ground, the
down
minority,
there.
can't do this.
The only man that ever stood up for me in my fucking life.
He's he's crying, dude. Bro. Oh, dude.
Through and through.
Donald fucking Trump.
Fucking Obama. Fuck Obama.
The only dude who's ever stood up for me, man.
Fuck Obama.
Yo, that motherfucker just won the election, I'll tell you that much. Fuck Joe Biden.
Not guilty.
I hope the
Not
country doesn't
guilty.
burn down.
Not guilty.
I hope that we
Not
can find a way
guilty.
to love each other and to make right this fucking.
Dude, you want people to love each other? What did you just say, like, not that long ago?
Fucking corrupt
Your fucking
motherfucker.
kids are all dead. Your kids are all
Piece
fucking
of
dead.
shit.
Now, like, hearing that again, I don't think he's talking about... I think he's, like, saying, like, oh, because he's not going to be in charge, all of our kids are going to be dead or something like that. I don't know. Like... Dude... I just want all of us to love each other, so I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Fuck Joe Biden. To make right this fucking this prostitution. Go fuck yourself and your mother.
I just want us to love each other. Go fuck yourself and your mother. We get a sequel for this guy too.
There's a verdict. It better be innocent. It
I guess
better
this
be
was
fucking
beforehand.
innocent. We're gonna go inside the courthouse. We're gonna tear it apart. Fuck you. Fuck you.
No crime, nothing. There is nothing.
Fuck. No
There's
crime.
nothing.
There's no crime.
Where's the crime?
No crime committed.
Yeah.
Fuck you. It better be innocent.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's just funny when it comes like from people like this, who always make like the BLM protests out to be like all these riots and looters and stuff like that. This is how they talk about this, about something that overall, like, it's very unprecedented, but it's not like it's going to affect him that hard. Like, I truly believe that, like, a lot of Trump voters are not going to sway because of this. Again, I don't think the court case really is going to play that much into a factor, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm just enjoying it. I'm enjoying the little outrage here, enjoying the little bits. But yeah, that's all I really had to say on the matter.